Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this two-part series, we sit down to talk about a multi-agency public interaction event designed to bring positive law enforcement interaction to ill children and their families at the Loma University Children's Hospital. To discuss the Loma Children's Hospital Cops for Kids fly-in, we get to talk to Doug Brimmer from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and Ian Crocker from the Riverside Police Department in California. Doug Brimmer has served the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department for over 28 years. His passion for law enforcement began early as he was raised in a military, law enforcement, and aviation family. Following the historic footsteps of his father, Vic Brimmer, Doug passionately pursued the same law enforcement and aviation career as his father. After serving 2 years in the jail system and 8 years of patrol, he was assigned to Sheriff's Aviation in 2011. While in aviation, he flew for 2 years as a TFO, 8 years as a patrol helicopter pilot, and 2 years as a rescue helicopter pilot. He's conducted well over 75 live hoist rescue missions throughout San Bernardino County. While in aviation, he also serves as a recruitment team member for the department, a coordinator for the Aero Squadron, and volunteers on the boards for both the Sheriff's Historical Society and the California Law Enforcement Historical Society. Ian Crocker was raised in Redlands, California. In 2008, Ian graduated with a bachelor's degree from Cal State San Bernardino. While in college, Ian also began working in mental health programs for at-risk youth. In 2012, Ian took the first step in pursuing his dream job in law enforcement. He entered the Extended Academy at San Bernardino Valley College while working full-time during the day. The Extended Academy took a year to complete. He received his basic post certificate in August of 2013 and was hired by the Riverside Police Department in October of 2013. Ian's worked patrol. He was selected as a school resource officer and was also selected to be a collateral member of their SWAT sniper team. In 2020, Ian was selected as a tactical flight officer briefly before testing, interviewing, and being selected as a pilot. Thank you to our sponsors CNC Technologies, Summit Aviation, and Astronautics Corporation of America.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Shanley.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
When I first got into law enforcement, which is a long time ago now, the early 80s, Riverside was like the agency in the United States that all the other agencies kind of looked to for tactical stuff. And there's a lot of, like, the street survival books. There's a lot of their photos are Riverside PD guys. Riverside was looked to for tactics as leading the way and being innovative and progressive. And those words might not have been used at the time, but when you look back on them, their tactics were innovative and progressive. And were you aware of that Riverside had that part of the history of the tactical side?
Yeah, and when you start here, those tactics come from us learning, just like other agencies, from the hard way. Unfortunately, that guys pay the ultimate sacrifice so that we can get better. So, like the Christensen and Teal or the Doty Trust situation, that's kind of what I think our department took. We take from that and throw that into our tactics so that we can get better and avoid that in the future. It's one of those things where when you start here, your FTOs will take you around to each site where those unfortunate circumstances occur. It's not to scare you away from the job. It's just to make you better and stronger, and to understand why we do what we do. And yeah, you're very right. I was always told that we kind of invented the felony stop. That was kind of where Riverside made its mark, and then and other places as well. So yeah, that was kind of cool to be a part of coming onto this team.
No doubt about it, and it's unique because it's somebody has to start things, change things, find new ways of doing things, and the Newhall incident certainly changed everything in law enforcement. There's a lot of young cops that don't even know what the Newhall incident is. I've done this for years in my class where I put a picture up of the Newhall incident. I said, how many of you know what that picture's from? And of course, every chippy knows. Every California Highway Patrol officer knows exactly what it is. They still talk about it in their academy, as they should, just like you're talking about, Ian. But the vast majority of young officers have no idea what that is. And what I followed up is, well, every one of you benefits today because of that, because departments changed after that and they came up with new ideas because the CHP wasn't alone. The tactics at that time, which was late 60s, those tactics were pretty universal in the United States. They weren't good. And we'd look at them now and go, how could that be acceptable? But it was the 60s. It wasn't, tactics wasn't at the top, a top priority. But my recollection is, as that went on, is exactly what you just said, Ian, that departments started saying, well, that's not going to happen to us anymore. We're going to change. And Riverside was one of them that was willing to go to the forefront and say, we're going to change things and we're going to share it with people. And we're going to allow people from Caliber Press to come in and take our pictures and talk to us about tactics and write, what we believe works. And the felony stop is one of many things that changed dramatically out of tragedy, of course, because law enforcement doesn't have any foresight until something bad happens. But that's something to be proud of with the Riverside PD. They should be very proud of that because it needed to change. No doubt.
And now when you look at like what Doug was talking about with the Explorers, that is, if Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one of the things they're graded on, right? Is the felony stops. And like, that's something these kids are learning at an early age. Not when you're in the academy or FTO, it's as an Explorer.
Absolutely. You see them when they go through the academy and see how they're doing, and they're excelling above most everybody else. They're doing great.
That is fantastic that they're learning that early, because they're going to that's going to be with them. Many of them are going to end up being cops, and it's going to keep them safe going forward. And hopefully they get to retire and have a nice, safe, productive career. But it has to start somewhere. And the fact that they're learning it as explorers, man, that's so cool. Really cool. We kind of talked about your departments and we kind of touched on your units as well, but let's get a little bit more specific. We'll go back to you, Ian. Tell us about Riverside PD Aviation Unit, mission profiles, type of aircraft, mission equipment, the missions that you're assigned, what primary missions, secondary missions sort of thing. Give us an overview of Riverside PD Aviation.
Yeah, good question. Our primary role is to support patrol. We conduct a minimum, usually 3 to 4 hours patrol flights just at random. Then obviously when we get called, we'll go up. We currently have, other roles that we do. We are in the surveillance business as well, off and on. In the past, probably more so than now, because you have departments that are actually getting in it too throughout the region. We still have our Cessna 206, and it hasn't been in much use recently, but now that we have the A-Stars, we can do surveillance in those, just as good. So, but yeah, currently we do patrol, we support patrol, we do surveillance, we help dignitary flights, we help detectives. Thing about Riverside, we have that whole river bottom area that runs up through the city. So we kind of help them out with being able to get eyes on maybe suspects that might have fled into that area, or might be hiding out in that area, or in remote parts of the city or other parts of the region. Missing children, missing people, things like that. The typical surveillance roles that air support units do. I told John we're kind of reaching out and looking at the airborne use of force world and seeing what that entails. But and we may get into that later, but we're also looking at sending 2 guys to do long line work here in this next month to do Bambi bucket work. So we'll be able to drop water on the river bottom if there's a fire, if need be. So that's kind of our roles as of now. We currently have 2 H-125s. We just took delivery this year. We took one in March and we got the other one in June. It's the AS-350E model. So we got the extra horsepower in both of those. They're great airships. We're very proud of them. We're very happy to have them. Prior to that, we had the MD-500E models that did us a lot of good. I mean, that's what I was fortunate to get my private and my commercial in the 500. So like Doug said, I that's one of it kind of has a place in my heart. for flying. Those things are like little Porsches in the sky, man. You can just zip around and have a good time. Moving up to the A-Star is a good thing. It's a good piece of equipment. We currently have the FLIR 380 HDC for the camera, and then we have the shot over software for the mapping system. On the new helicopters, we have the Trekka beams for lighting. We love it. There's so many options, and that it works very well with the shot over software, to where working calls, you can slave it, you can offset it, you can do anything with both of those. We have two of the 380s. One of them has a night camera or low light camera. It's an awesome option that we have available to us. Any pilot knows that when you go to launch, one of the biggest obstacles at night is that you have to wait that 8 to 10 minutes for your FLIR to cool down and get going. So having that night camera right out the gate is like money. We've been really successful with that. So, and then we still have the Cessna 206, and we have the 2500 sitting back there, probably going to be sold here pretty soon, I'd imagine.
I know that you're primarily working urban, but your area also has some terrain around it. Is there any search and rescue side of your unit?
Not, I wouldn't say officially. We do offsite landings, and we'll help get people. We go over to Corona a lot, and they have the Skyline area up there that separates them from the Orange County side. And there's a lot of folks up there that get stuck up there. And so in the past, we've done offsite landings and scoop people off the Skyline ridge there. We don't do the hoist work. It's just strictly land and pick them up. But we service that area up to Lake Matthews, Lake Hills, that area. We get a lot of the off-roaders will crash and get stuck, and so sometimes we'll help out, if we need to land or get eyes on, so we can guide some of the fire folks in there to help rescue them. I guess you could say we're a good asset to have in that respect.
Yeah.
So we do. We have all that. We have the urban terrain. We have Mount Rubidoux. We have a lot of we have a little bit of everything, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you do. There's no doubt. Now, Doug, that's a same question for Doug, but I know this is going to be challenging because it's such a wide variety of equipment. But give us the rundown of the mission profiles and equipment.
And that's another reason why I love my job so much. With such a variety to do here, starting with our missions, our primary is obviously patrol. We use our A-Star for those. Secondary, I would say rescue. And we use both. Another thing with those A-Stars, what they're so great for, you can use them for both rescue and patrol. So the rescues are primarily handled with the Hueys. And after that, probably be between surveillance by utilizing our fixed wing. And we also do medical runs. So back and forth, kind of like the EMS program, but we use our air medics for that. But even with the rescues, again, we can use A-Star. I think my highest hoist in an A-Star was just under 10,000 feet up at San Gorgonio. And then we also do aerial firefighting. And again, we can use both the Huey and the A-Star for that. We use the Bambi buckets for the A-Star, and then we can use a larger Bambi bucket for the Huey, as well as a external tank. Yeah, so the equipment we use, most of the A-Stars have all the equipment. The Hueys are pretty dried and cut just for the hoisting, rescues, and transports. So on our A-Star, we use the Westcam MX-10. We use Aero computers and Technosonic 800 radios. Let's see here. For our lighting, we use, I can't remember the old name. Ian, what's the...
Spectralab?
Spectralab, yes. I actually brought Mike Kiphorn out from Trekka Systems, and he was great. He actually outfitted one of our patrol ships with it. There wasn't a complaint about it. We all loved it. So I think what we're going to do is we're getting a new rescue helicopter very soon, and we're going to outfit that with a Trekka light, and we'll get a second one next year.
What's that going to be, Doug? What airframe?
So that's going to be the Bell 412 EPX.
412s EPX.
That thing's a dump truck. Thing's awesome.
Yes. So we're looking forward to getting that. So we'll actually get 2 of those by next year.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Real quick, I want to touch on these systems that work together. And Traka and Shotover have developed these systems between the cameras and the augmented reality systems, whatever you want to call them, the mapping systems inside on the computer. It's, to me, it's really cool when you can have one manufacturer that's designing these products to work hand in hand with each other. And Traka's done a really good job with that. I've heard a lot of good things about their lighting systems. And Ian, you might be able to speak to what you're seeing with their filters. I've heard really, really good things about their filters, and the yellow one in particular. I've got no experience with that filter or with the lighting systems, but I'm hearing really good things about that system, just in the lighting. But before you go to that, real quick, when you've got the navigational systems working with the camera systems and the lighting systems, that's pretty amazing. You know, Shotover's doing the same thing. You know, when you can design the mapping systems and the camera systems. So many of these helicopters, they're just big moving IT systems, and it's hard to troubleshoot, hard to get these things to work together. And they figured out how to do it. So it's really cool. So sorry, Jack, to hijack for 1 second, but I just really want to hear about Ian and what your experience with the lights.
When we first got the Traka system, and just to add on a side note, the customer service on both sides, the Shotover and Traka, have been phenomenal. There was actually a point where Traka came out here and just walked us through. Some of our night guys physically just went on flights with us to help us work through some of the kinks that we just, it just helps to have someone with the knowledge. But those filters, if you talk to any of the guys on the streets, one of the biggest complaints they have with like the night suns is that the backlighting and just the intense amount of light that comes off of those night suns. And so what Traka has done is they've developed different filters of like green, red, yellow, all these blue. You can make it like a disco party with those things if you wanted to. But yeah. So what they did, and we found that patrolmen typically like the yellow filter. The reason for that, it's a good amount of light. It's a soft amount of light. So when they're doing their yard-to-yard searches, or if they're working a call where it's like a felony stop, it's not so intense to where it's distracting them or creating any type of issues on the ground. So for them to have done that is pretty phenomenal. And the only one more thing that I'll add to that is the option that works with Shotover, where you can set a waypoint where you want the light to stay, like a marker, or you can have it slave with the camera, where every time you move the camera, the light moves with the camera on the aperture. Or you can just offset it. And so every time you move the camera, the light's offset, say maybe like a quarter mile. So you can use it for different tactics. So it just has all these options that we didn't have before. Before, I know everyone knows this, you've got the FLIR camera in one hand, the controller, and you're using the night sun in the other. And it just looks like a disaster on the ground when you're trying to line both of them up and keep them moving, because there's a time when you need the regular video camera at night to be able to work the call, and you need that light to provide the light, and you're thumbing through it, and it can be really tough. So Traka's really made it a lot easier on us.
Is the slaving system, does it work really well?
Very well. The only time we've had an issue is like real tight orbits, where it'll try to keep up, but it still does a really good job. And once it catches that it slaves into slave mode, it stays with that camera really well. We like it.
Really valuable. So valuable to have a good slaving system. Slaving systems have been around a long time, but they weren't very effective, or they were hit and miss. So it's good to hear that it's finally to a point where it's effective and practical.
It makes TFO jobs a lot easier.
Oh, yes.
I give my TFO a hard time about that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For folks that don't know, slaving systems work so that the light and the camera systems work in conjunction. So where the camera's pointed, the light's pointed, and vice versa. So where that's important is a lot of agencies are going to camera systems. They're following pursuits, for example, on their cameras versus out the window. So if you've got a pursuit, you're following the camera, it's really hard then to, like Ian's saying, move the light to follow the camera So if you can join the two, and they call that slaving, it makes it really, really effective for both, both functions. The light really serves as a warning to the motorists that are around that fleeing vehicle. There's something happening. So it's nice that these agents or these companies are producing something that works in conjunction, because I feel like we're really at a tipping point now with agencies that are using their camera and how they're using it. And that's a whole nother probably podcast by itself. But some agencies are using their camera only on searches. Some are using it all the time. And I think there's a really big divide between the two. So anyways, yeah, really cool.
Yeah, no doubt. Doug, airborne use of force, your department certainly was one of the leaders in the United States in going to that many, many years ago. Tell us a little bit about that. Maybe give us a little thumbnail history lesson on that, and where you're at today with airborne use of force at San Bernardino County.
Thank you to our sponsor, CNC Technologies. CNC Technologies, serving law enforcement, government, and military markets with tailored mission solutions, system training, and live 24/7 support with CNC.live platform. Explore more at cnctechnologies.com.
We're still continuing it, right? We're doing training every 3 months. We're doing both day and night shoots. Currently at our academy, there is 3 courses we put our TFOs through that they have to pass, how many rounds have to hit. It's a conjunction of flight maneuvers that they'll have to perform those in. And we've been doing it since, I think, the late 70s. We still do training with outside agencies, Texas DPS. Clay Lacey is amazing. And we've also, one of our TFOs is he's a Marine. So he got us hooked up with the 29 Palms Marine base. And they actually have an area out there where you can, it's actually really neat. It's like a robot on almost like a tank platform, and then a body on top. They move those around, remote control, and you fly over, perform your maneuver. And if it's a deadly hit, it automatically will fold the body down, just like you hit it. And they were able to reset them as well. So they put you in this scenario village with those robots wandering around town, and it's great training.
Wow. And just so we're clear for our listeners, you said, and I'm aware of this, but for our listeners, the tactical flight officers are the trigger pullers here, correct?
Correct. I know other agencies use their SWAT team. We were kind of on the lines of, hey, when we get the call, sometimes we're already in the air. Do we need to go back and wait for a SWAT member to deploy? So we found it very effective to use the flight officer and cut down that response time. So we have the rifle behind the seat, and currently we've been training to either transition while in flight, which that's a bunch of rules to go along with that, or simply land and transition to the back seat. So
right. But if my memory serves me correctly, and my memory's shot at this point, but wasn't there a time when in the 500 you had 500s with an MP5 in a rack for the TFO? Is that accurate?
That is accurate. We had the MP5.
Wow. I remembered something. Thank God.
I actually have some video of them training at the academy, shooting the MP5 at a 500. And whoever's flown the 500 knows how difficult that can be, holding that door open. So, but they still trained with that. They also trained with the Ruger Mini 14 with a special stock on it. So,
right. Very cool. Which brings us back to you, Ian. You just had some experience with Texas DPS, and Texas DPS followed the San Bernardino model. I would say, is that accurate, Doug? You think that DPS followed your model?
I don't know about Texas. I know our local, because some of our local ones have talked to us and used some of our training on that, but I'm not sure about Texas.
I think Texas has led the nation in the deployment of that tactic. So in my mind, they've led it. San Bernardino County has followed, and we took ours from a combination of you guys, Doug, and Texas. Like Texas is doing some really, really amazing stuff. And Cody and what he's teaching out there is absolutely amazing. The training you're talking about, I think that was at 29 Palms, where you've got the targets that'll fold over when they're hit. That's a really unique targeting system. And that was it the Marine Corps that was doing that?
Yes, that was the Marines.
Yeah, like getting access to those types of things, the targeting systems that the Texas DPS has on the ranches in Texas is pretty amazing. But Texas is absolutely doing some really, really cool stuff. It's been really fun to see. We took a lot of their info, and I know you guys did too as well, Doug, when it comes to policy procedure and just the overall tactics that we're employing. Like Texas is, in my mind, they're really leading the charge in how we're employing these tactics.
Yeah, they showed us tactics that we just absolutely loved. And those guys are great. You hit them up and they'll say, come on out anytime. And they make time for you. And, the training is great. All of our guys love it from them.
So what was your experience, Ian? You were there recently with Cody in Texas DPS?
Yeah, so prior to actually going out there, we reached out to Chris Mejia out at SBSO. Chris Mejia and I think it was Dan Future went out to Texas a while back and kind of did some work with them. And so we reached out to Chris and he invited us out to their quals. It was about 3 weeks ago, I want to say, maybe a month ago. And we went out to their night quals just to get a kind of precursor of what we were getting into before we went out to Texas. And it was just awesome to see what Doug and his team and then those guys, Ed Leon, all those guys, they come out, they start in the morning and they end at night, and they work hard just from setting up the targets, getting the range right, and briefing on what they're going to do, the classroom portion, everything. It's very organized. Just on a side note, this type of a use of force can be obviously heavily scrutinized, especially where we're at. But the departments that utilize it go through rigorous steps to make it as perfect as possible. These are tactics that are only deployed in the absolute worst scenarios where there's no other means of stopping a threat. And so San Bernardino's done a great job of really learning as much as they possibly can to make it just a really dialed up, fine-tuned program. Now going out to Texas, one of our pilots, Brian Moulton, and I got to go out to Texas for 10 days just recently. We just got back 2 days before Thanksgiving. So we went out to El Dorado, Texas, and met with one of John's friends, Cody Klain. And if anyone knows Cody, I met Clay.
He's the man.
Yeah, I met Clay. Clay also, he's the guy's a legend. He's probably taught us all TFO tactics and some of the things that they do out in Texas. But Cody invited us out along with Phil and Brian and all those guys. I mean, these are probably the most hospitable guys that you'll ever meet. They we before we went out, we asked them, hey, what do we need? We need to bring any equipment, anything? Nope, just come up. Just come out. We'll take care of you.
Yeah, and, they're Texans, Ian.
Yes, yes.
That's what they do. They do it so nicely,
and they feed you very well.
Yeah. Any barbecue, Ian? Did they feed you any barbecue?
Oh man, I tell you, it was bad enough because I came back and then it was Thanksgiving, so I've got some pounds to shed. But it was the meals out there were great. But I say that, and it wasn't all fun and games out there. They get down and dirty, and they start beginning of the day. They get out there, they get going, 2 helicopters running all day long into the night, sometimes coming in around midnight. And then at the end of the day, you're debriefing. You could walk into that classroom at midnight and they still want to debrief how the day went, what we learned, what we didn't learn, what we could have done better. Just going out there, you're really just paying for lodging and meals. The training they provide, which is phenomenal given the circumstances. They will put you in a helicopter. They give you the full experience of what you're going to go through for qualifications, the classroom portion of learning all the tactics and what it takes to keep people trained, as well as being a safety officer, all the roles and responsibilities of having a program like that. They walk you through, and they just open up their whole house to you and make you comfortable. And then you get a little bit of that, hey, you're from California kind of thing, of course, but they look past that very quickly, and they treat you like family out there. So it's really cool. We learned a lot. We brought a lot back home. We'll see if our department hopefully gets on board with this. But if there's anywhere to go, those two places are the best, SBSO and Texas DPS. Cody really took good care of us, all his guys. Shout out to them. They're good guys. They do a great job, and they're brothers to all of us, to bring us in their home and treat us nice.
So, Ian, seriously, are you telling me that there were California jokes?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is a stunning development.
Yeah.
I've never heard a California joke from a Texan. I've never heard one.
Man, it was, after a while, you just kind of, I have thick skin, so I have fun with it. But, we have Texan jokes too. So it was like a mutual.
Sure.
It was good. It was a good trip. We had a good time.
Good. Well, I agree. Those are two units that I would go to for information on that. And over the years teaching, I think I got so many questions over the years about airborne use of force. And the one thing that I consistently told units was that don't get into this haphazardly. Don't just jump into this. This will get you in trouble faster than anything else you can do from the air. And you got to crawl, walk, run, and you got to find the subject matter experts and the people that have been there, done that, and you've got to talk to them. And I always told them, you need to call San Bernardino Sheriff's Department, you need to call the Coast Guard, and now in modern era, you got to call Texas DPS. And if you don't talk to those three units, then you're making a big mistake, because all three of those units will tell you all the mistakes, we did it on my department, obviously, but not in the same way. It was all with SWAT snipers, and it was different. And mainly because it's an urban environment. It's a little different in San Bernardino, a lot of San Bernardino County, a lot of Texas. When you're dealing with the city of Los Angeles, it's a whole different. And same with you, Ian. Dealing with urban Riverside, it's a whole different ball game. It limits you on when you can use it and when you shouldn't use it. And it's not just this magic wand thing. It's a big deal.
But on that note, Jack, it's the criminals are bringing a different ballgame of threats to our communities. And when we started looking at this, anyone that hears this will probably scrutinize such a program, because the first question is, well, why would you need something like that? And as someone who has a family, if whether it's whatever kind of threat it may be, I'd want my family to have any piece of equipment or expertise put in play to keep them safe if they're at in a park, anywhere that they could be kept safe. I'd want that police department to have the tools and the skills to deploy anything that they could to stop a threat or to keep the community safe. It's not about us being militarized or anything like that. It's about us providing the highest level of service for our communities at the end of the day. So I wanted to add to that comment.
No, I think that comment's important. I think that comment's really important, because we all know how certain people are going to look at that. They will look at it as, oh, it's all militarization, and now they want to shoot people from the air. No, it's called foresight, something that we just talked about earlier that law enforcement lacks a lot of times. No, it's foresight. There are situations that can and will arise where that might be the only option. And if you're not ready for it and people die, they're going to eventually come back and say, well, why weren't you ready for that?
That's right.
Well, because you didn't let us get ready for it. Remember, we wanted to do this and you told us we couldn't.
That's right.
It's foresight. So I think it's a great tool to have, even if you never, ever use it.
You hope to never use it, as the case.
Exactly. It's going to be a bad day if you have to use it. It's going to be very unique. Doug can speak to that. It's going to be a pretty unique situation, but they happen, and they've happened in San Bernardino. They've happened in Texas. They've happened in Alaska. They've happened in LA. they happen. Good conversation about that.
I'd like to just touch on a few things. One, Eric Widener comes to mind again. Eric was an amazing leader, a lot of foresight. One of the things he said, and I've said this a lot in the past, you don't want your first time doing something to be your first time doing something. And that applies in these situations, 100%. And I think about, Jack, we were like you in Ontario. We didn't have a lot of rural areas. It's all urbanized.
Yeah.
So the chances of us employing this tactic is fairly low. You just don't know. Again, considering what's happening worldwide, all the global political situations that are taking place. Again, you don't want the first time doing something to be the first time you're doing something.
I can hear Eric's voice saying that line. I mean, I really can, because he has foresight. I wish I would have worked for him, because I know Eric pretty well, not as well as you, obviously, John, but I can hear him saying that. And that's a great line.
He was such a good leader, and he still is, with CNC Technologies, but he's a great man. But it's true, we're in an age in the world where we don't know what's going to happen next, and we can't be prepared for everything. But there's certain things that we know are potentially a threat, and this is one tool in the tool belt that we might potentially have to take out and use. So, looking at San Bernardino County, looking at Texas DPS, we can say how do we employ this tool in a way that is beneficial to us and the citizens we're protecting. And I think they've kind of shown how we can use those things in an effective manner.
Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com.
The one scenario that when we get questioned about it regularly, well, why do you need this? The one scenario that we would bring up, and that SWAT would bring up, is the vehicle interdiction. If you know with 99% certainty that U-Haul truck that's coming through the grapevine down into LA is loaded with explosives, and you know it because of intelligence or an undercover or whatever, and now they're coming, and you've got to stop that before it gets to LA. How is it that you're going to do that? I mean, how are you going to be able to do that? Well, one way is airborne use of force. With the right weapon and the right training and the right experience, that can be done. So we would use that to sell it. Now, we know we're not going to be picking people off on corners and intersections and stuff in downtown LA, but that's what people were picturing. And we tried to aim it to a realistic scenario that's possible, saying, well, what would the other option be? And they go, well, we don't really know. Well, we know this would work, and we trained for it and did it. And that helped sell it sometimes.
Yeah. And that's what's important is being able to sell it to the decision makers and why we need it, because it's a cost intensive program and training intensive program.
If you go into it, you gotta stay current. You can't just say, okay, we did it, and now we know we can do it. No, you gotta keep it up. You gotta train for it regularly. Or the skills of both air crew and shooter are going to go away. The shooters, that's a whole different ball game. I watched outstanding snipers struggle, when they were brand new to it, and then they learned, about negative lead and all those cool things, and then they end up being really, really good. But that's not something that happens in a day of going out and plinking it at a piece of steel in the desert. I mean, you've got to train for it and then base it on scenarios and things like that, which I know the agencies we're talking about have all done, and that's outstanding. That's how it should be.
It fine tunes the CRM between the TFO and the pilot. I'll tell you that.
It sure does.
Yeah, I was going to say, to piggyback off you, Jack, it's better to be prepared and ready to deploy it at any moment. On the other end, we've had agencies come out and say, hey, we want to do this. Can we use your policy on it? Absolutely. Whatever you need. But they're also telling us we're getting pushback. You need an agency that will back it too. Our sheriff is great and has been. Each sheriff, we've had great bosses, and the county is great at backing us on this right now.
Very important. that it has to be back from the top, or you probably shouldn't be doing it. It's going to be trouble if you're not back from the top, because they're going to walk backwards if something bad happens. That's good that you've had that support. Let's circle back to something we talked about earlier, get some more details here. Let's go back to the fly-in for a second, and let's talk about that day. How many agencies, how many helicopters, and what's that briefing like? Let's talk about the safety aspect of this and coordinating that. Ian, what you want to start?
Just to give you an idea, not just that day, we usually start working on this thing probably as early as May or June. I know Doug knows, and you guys know as well as I do, getting all the leadership personnel from both sheriffs, from Riverside, San Bernardino, my chief, all these guys in the same room at the same time is not an easy task. So we have to start scheduling this thing out well in advance. And then, of course, we do toy drives. We prep for meals, contingencies. As it gets closer, we really look at like weather. That's probably the most nerve-wracking thing because we want it to be a good fly-in. But like I said before, it's about the kids, about the toys. Even if we can't fly in, we'll bring those toys. Day of, I don't know about Doug. I start off the day pretty quickly, early, probably around 4. I try to get in early before everyone get a workout in, just kind of get that stress out. And then I start working on kind of how I want this day to play out. A lot of it is prepped ahead of time. If my true belief is that if you're walking in the day of and you're worried about something that may or may not happen, then that probably is a problem. And I've kind of learned to delegate a lot of that to other people. And that hence, Doug and Chad and Manny, they've all stepped up and helped out with that. So on my end, my focus is getting the toys out to the hospital. That's been my role. Doug's always been a huge help, just providing that hospitality of housing everyone in the same place, same time, getting the briefing done. What I do is typically roll over there about 8:30 in the morning. There's usually breakfast, and the brief usually starts around 10 a.m. with just having the command staff there, some good leadership, giving a good kind of some good pointers to the folks that are participating in this, prepping them. It's not easy going over to that hospital and seeing what some of these families, they really are going through a difficult time. And so we need to prep our guys to know that we're there as a sense of foundation and stability for them to know that we support them and that we're there to encourage them to get through whatever obstacles they have in front of them. So we have that conversation through Sheriff Dicus and this year Sheriff Bianco, Chief Gonzalez. They all kind of chime in and help out. We even do a Pledge of Allegiance. Sheriff Dicus led in that this year, and do a prayer, and we break bread. We have breakfast, and then we organize into groups. So we usually do 6 or 7 units, and it's about 6 officers per unit. So we'll have sign-ups. Volunteers come up and sign up to go up to the units and hand out toys and meet with the kids. And that's all done at the hangar before we head over. From that point on, we wrap up and we head out to our vehicles, our helicopters. The flight crews, they do their own pre-brief. They have an ops plan that's prepped. This year was actually Steve Quinn that did the ops plan. He did the fly-in portion. He knocked it out of the park. And so since he did such a good job, I'm going to ask him to do it next year, and probably a year after that. But no, it's cool. They do their brief. They jump in the helicopter, and we do 5 helicopters, and the reason for that is just we have limited space on the lawn as far as aircraft are concerned. We don't want to crowd it up too much and make it unsafe. So Ian, they come in waves then of 5 at a time, unload, and then the next wave will come in. Is that what you mean? So it's just 5 aircraft total. And what happens? Okay. Yeah. So what happens is the aircraft depart San Bernardino. They taxi over. They depart together in a flight of 5, and they do basically they have a holding point over the hospital, and each helicopter will land one at a time into formation. So it's 2 rows of 2, and then there's one in the rear. It's gotcha. Almost like a little like semi-diamond or triangular formation. And then once they land and they're safely shut down, we bring in the ARVs and the motors, the K9s and all the support vehicles, and we line them up as well. There's a lot of work that goes into setting up the lawn in the area so that it's very professionally done, and it's set up so it's easily accessible for the kids to get in and out of those pieces of equipment. And once that's all set up, we do, some of the hospital staff, they do a prayer and an opening comments. They allow me to kind of thank the folks that helped me get the job done and getting the event going. And then we kick off the event. I'd also like to add that there are liaisons at the hospital at Loma Linda that help me get this event organized, that they go through a lot of hurdles as well. So I'm very thankful for them. But there's just so many moving parts that we try to get cleaned up before the day of the event, so that once we, show up at the hangar and we do our brief, have breakfast, everything is just very structured so that we have a time. Hey, this time we're going to do this time we're going to do that. And there's a little bit of wiggle room, but for the most part, we also don't, if kids get out there on the lawn, we don't want them to be waiting on us too long, or it to be, sometimes it can get hot out there. So we want to have everything set up so that it's easy for them to enjoy the equipment, and enjoy being around the cops and the personnel, and get some toys and have a good time. So once that's done and we kick off the event, we make a call for the officers to come up to the stage, and then they divide into their groups that they signed up for, and they go up to the units. And they, it could be kids receiving respiratory care, cardiac care. They could be there for cancer treatment. There's just different units that they branch off into to go visit with these kids and hand out the toys and visit with them, and talk to the parents, and just, interacting with the families in general is just, it's a huge plus for us, because everyone here knows that most of the time when they call the cops, it's for something bad. It's nice to get out and be that force for good, and to meet up with them at a time, even though they're going through a really difficult struggle in their life. We can help the best that we can. Once that's all done, we start to close out the event, and all the vehicles will depart from the lawn, head back to their agencies, and then the helicopters will take off and leave, usually around like 2 p.m. But this year, we usually do a lunch, but we found that guys are just there. It's a busy day, and guys are pretty tired, and folks are tired, and to go back and have lunch after that just adds to it. So this year I just cut the lunch out. I said, let's have a big breakfast, and once we're done at the hospital, we'll just break from there and be done. So it seemed to work out pretty well with that format this year.
Doug, what's your perspective of that day from your agency's point of view?
Well, I was gonna jump in and apologize to Ian. Kind of a funny thing. So Ian's busy. He's got a lot of contacts to make, phone calls. He has a lot on his plate. So I kind of added to that plate. When it got to our department, we'll put out their flyer, and like I said, we have a ton of volunteers. So when the flyer went out, I was getting bombarded with phone calls. Well, who do I direct my questions to? Ian. So the first call was, hey, Ian, how's it going? One of our patrol stations wants to know if they can bring Santa. He's like, well, let me check. I'll get right back to you. Calls him back. Sure, Santa's good. Probably the next month. Hey, Ian, I got another request for you. They want to know if they can bring a posse team out there. So Ian says, sure, he is a good sport. Sure, let me find out. I'll get back to you. That wasn't such a great, they wanted the kids to pet horses and whatnot. That's not around helicopters. So we 86 that idea. And then what was the last one? I called up, and I think he even knew. Do you have another request? And I said, I do. They want to know if they can bring out Marvel costumes and dress up as Marvel. And he said, all right, let me get back to you. I'll see. So he got back to me, and the hospital, they're gracious enough to let that happen. So the kids, that thing's evolving. We get so many requests and everything. I can imagine Ian being so busy already as it is. So sorry, Ian. We had to.
It's cool. It's like we said. It's a good problem to have, and I appreciate that folks are thinking outside the box like that for me, because I Doug, when he first it was the Marvel like cosplay folks, and that was like a huge hit with the kids. They loved it, having like the Iron Man, type thing going on, and they really dig that stuff. And so I'm all about, if we can make that happen, I'll 100%. I think it's great. I've created this step process where it's like, okay, if we want this, all right, I'm gonna call the hospital. All right, you guys cool with it? I don't know. Let me ask my higher ups. Okay, get back to me. And then it's like this trickle down back to, okay, we can do it, but we have to do this first. And it's working through the speed bumps. It's not a big deal. And Doug's a good sport. We give each other a hard time in that respect.
Yeah, I'll interject and talk about my kids came down. I think the last time I was there was 2019, and the 501st Legion of Star Wars guys were there that year. And it's all the really professional, probably like we're talking about for the Marvel cosplay folks. These costumes that they're dressing up in are movie quality costumes. So they all show up. There's probably 15 of them representing a different Star Wars character. So my kids come down, and they're not interested in the helicopters. They want to see all the Lego, or not the Lego, the Star Wars guys, and all the the armored vehicle and the motorcycles, everything except aviation. I'm like, wait a minute, you guys are traitors, So don't you want to see that? Like, no, Dad, I'm good. I've seen that before. They want to see all that stuff. So again, going back to what you were saying, Ian, it's about the kids and what drives their motivation and their interest. It's the Marvel characters, the Star Wars characters, the armored vehicles, the motorcycles. I think of myself as a kid seeing a helicopter, an armored vehicle, a motorcycle, Star Wars and Marvel characters. That's a kid's dream. So the fact that you're providing that for these children who are literally in the hospital for maybe life-threatening conditions is amazing. You're changing these kids' lives through the service you're providing. And I know it's not just you. There's a team, and Doug and you guys, the sheriffs, are part of that. But those are the things that I think we all join this profession to do, is to provide a positive impact, change lives, and to do things that are really, really impactful for people. And this is one thing. And that's why I really love what you guys are doing with this fly-in. So, for agencies that aren't doing something like this and have the ability to, I really, really encourage you to look at how you can partner with these children's hospitals and other agencies to bring this to, the forefront in these kids' lives, because it's really impactful, not just for the kids, for the people that are doing it too. I mean, it's impacted my life. I think I've been brought to the point of tears, talking to some of these kids and parents and what they're going through.
You protect and defend. So do we. Astronautics' proven cybersecurity, connectivity, and upgrade solutions support helicopter OEMs and operators worldwide. When the mission matters, you need to trust that your avionics systems are secure, connected, and reliable, because lives depend on it. Continue to protect and defend. So will we. Contact Astronautics at www.astronautics.com.
Yeah, John, just to add to that, I think, when we first started this conversation, it was like, oh, well, how did this all come about with San Bernardino and Riverside? And, what does Riverside have to do with Loma Linda? And my answer to that is that anyone that has a child in this neck of the woods, it could be any city in the Inland Empire. If there's any type of trauma or specialized treatment that needs to take place, Loma Linda is going to be at the top of the list for treatment or for any type of care that they need. You have CHOC out in Orange County. You have Children's Hospital LA. You have different children's hospitals. Not to say they're not good. They're great hospitals. They do great work. Those doctors and nurses, my hat's off to them. But this is kind of our stomping grounds. This is our home. And if something happens to one of our kids where we live, that's where they're going to go. Whether you're in Riverside, San Bernardino, High Desert, you're going to Loma Linda. That's kind of our role in this, is because it's really close to home for all of us and all of our families and the families for the communities we serve. So that's why Loma Linda. That's why we've if I could do this for all the hospitals that help kids, hands down, I would be happy to. That'd be the greatest thing that I could imagine doing. But this is the one that's closest to home, and that's why we do Loma Linda, and so yeah, I just wanted to add to that.
Perfectly stated, Ian. As always, we could talk for hours, both you guys, but we're gonna, looking at the time, we're gonna start to wrap it up. And a topic that is very important these days is personnel and the shortage of personnel. And I mean, John and I've talked about doing a show or two just on recruitment and retention and stuff with all sorts of different experts. But let's hear from you two and your perspective on this, and anything that either your unit's doing or your department's doing as far as the personnel shortage, and specifically to aviation. Are there specific things that your departments do to try and tell your officers and deputies, hey, the aviation unit, this is what they do, and this is what you need to do to get there? And talk to us about that. Doug, let's start with you. Talk to us about that topic.
Well, to add aviation in the mix, our department actively uses our helicopters come out, show what we could do, and they've made multiple videos, recruitment videos, showing our helicopter, our capabilities, along with all the other specialized units within our department. I think it's with our department, they're trying to change a couple things or just make something new. Is some agencies like John's Ontario, you guys have a cadet program, right? So after Explorers, you go to cadet. Well, we're huge on our volunteers. So we start with our volunteers, either using them, helping out, or to, like our Explorers is a big thing. Explorers will go out, they'll recruit other Explorers because we know once they age out, most of them will join the department. One of the new things that they're going to implement is after Explorers, or even if they're not an Explorer, they're going to start an intern program. And not just with a station answering phones or anything. We're going to get them more involved. So we're going to have intern programs in the coroner's office. We're going to have intern programs, with the CSI divisions, patrol stations, automotive. There's just so many different areas in our department that they can use help, and they're going to get paid for it. So that kind of helps bring them in, start them in for at least the guys that aren't old enough, and that's their foot in the door.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that one before. I mean, that's what it takes right now. It takes somebody thinking outside the box, because we are outside the box right now. I mean, every department
Absolutely.
in the United States is in the same boat right now in getting good quality people to come into the profession, and then the aviation units finding good quality people within their own departments to convince them, hey, this is a good gig. You ought to consider this, and this is what you need to do. That's good stuff. Very interesting, Doug.
Yeah, a lot of our patrol stations are shorthanded, even with our air units. And we're seeing where guys are leaving to either better paying jobs or better paying law enforcement agencies. So, they're thinking outside the box for sure.
When you look at aviation in particular, even in the years before the bad social climate, for some reason we had a hard time attracting people to apply, at least in my agency, for aviation. And I look at, it's hard to believe because it's the best job in the world. I think anybody who's in this position has sacrificed and given a lot to be where we are. So it's hard to understand why folks don't want to come. And I think a lot of it has to do with the lack of information that's out there. We talked about our aviation unit being an island. We're separated physically by land most times. And so I think that's part of it. But I think other times it's different reasons. So maybe to pose another question to you, Doug, and I guess we can go to Ian. Have you guys done anything in particular with your agency to recruit for aviation in particular that's outside the box?
So just specifically aviation, I would say no. Most of ours, and the department includes us, because they know getting that helicopter out there, that attracts a lot of attention. So we'll definitely come out, but even with our department, we want guys to become a deputy sheriff, not just join the department to be a pilot. You got to know how to be a cop. You got to know how to do certain things rather than just throw you into an air unit. So we don't sway on the side of aviation, but more of law enforcement aviation.
Ian, anything your department or unit's doing that you want to talk about?
Well, a few things actually. I think that when you look at the problem itself with getting new cops, that's half. I think that's half the battle, and then you also have the problem of retention, is that you have to retain the guys that are still there. We're losing a lot of folks to retirements, lateraling over to other, agencies even outside the state. They're there's a lot of bouncing around in that respect. So we try to hit it on both levels. Doug hit it on the head of the Explorer program. In fact, we have like 50 Explorers coming here tonight. We do work with the Explorers as well, where we have them come out to the hangar. They work with our Metro guys, our SWAT guys, and then they have about an hour, probably closer to like 2 hours with the aviation folks, to where we can kind of show them what we do and give them some ideas on how to get out here if and when they do become police officers. So that's kind of on the new cop end of things, like, because those are going to be potentially your new hires as your Explorers, your cadets. Like Doug said, those are the guys that are already have a foot in and they have a good eye on what they want to do. It's difficult to put it out to the community at large, like, hey, come work for the air support unit. So you have to kind of really be careful about how you approach that problem. As far as retention and things, I think it's good practice, and even we could do a better job. But we do go out to like roll calls with some of our personnel. We debrief incidents with them, like, hey, that was a great call. This is what we did. You guys did this great, blah, blah, blah. This is what we could do better. This is what maybe we could recommend you guys, if you could think about this next time or that. If you guys have anything for us, any questions, we're not trying to play the whole, hey, we're better than you, because we know we're not. We're just there to support them. That's our role. They're the ones on the ground. So I think it's a good interaction to have with your guys that are on the ground doing the hard work, to know like, hey, you guys can come out anytime and see what we do. We'll open our doors to you guys. And then potentially, if you have an interest, come out, do a fly along, work some calls, see what we do, and see if it's something that you want to do. But that's kind of the two-sided answer that I have for you on that one, is that you want to appeal to the new cops that are coming in to get them interested. And like Jack and John said, it's not going to be, for everybody, or Doug. It's like, you can't just say, hey, come be a cop so you can be a pilot. They have to learn how to be a deputy or a policeman first, and learn those tactics and learn all the hard stuff first. And then you can teach the aviation part of being an aircrew member. So that's kind of what we're doing. We've done recruitment events. We had a helicopter down at Miramar this year. We've done the March show. We've done a few of those recruitment events. So we're out there as well. We're trying. It's competitive with other agencies, and it's the pool isn't as big as we'd like it to be to get folks out to do this job. It's just not like it used to be.
Yeah. John, why don't we go to you? And before I wrap that up at the very end here, do you have anything you want to talk about before we wrap?
I guess just kind of along the lines of what Ian's saying. I feel like anytime we get the opportunity to interact with our patrol folks, it's great. You go back to Jimmy Hatch a lot, and he refers to people as their customers. Actually, I take that back. It's not Jimmy. It's Calvin and Dave. Our customers are our patrol folks, and they're the folks that Clay. Yeah, Clay says that too. Our customers are the patrol folks that we're serving. So a lot of times it's hard for my agency in particular to go to a briefing and talk about an incident that took place, because for us to do that, we've got to go land at the airport, get a crew car, drive from the airport down to the station. Meanwhile, you're out of service, because the response time for us to get back to the helicopter is probably 10, 15 minutes. But going down to being a part of these briefings is really big. And I remember talking to Steve Quinn, and we talked about this quite a bit. Being in these briefings and providing feedback is very, very important. So anytime you get a chance to do that, I highly recommend you do that. Not only do you get face time with these folks, but how many times when you're in the air do you look down on a call? A fire call is a good example. There's a structure fire. You look down and there's 15 police cars parked in front of a house on fire. Where's the fire truck going to go? How's that fire truck going to get in there? You look down, all these units have blocked the whole road. So our chance to go into briefing and be like, hey, like you said, Ian, we're not better than you, but we've seen this a lot. Why don't you guys park in a position that's better for fire to get in? Or whatever the thing is, we have a unique advantage perspective on things. It's our, I think, obligation to these folks to come ahead and be like, hey, we're not better than you, but this is what we see. We think you can do your job better by X, Y, and Z.
We've had police cars blocking a street with a downed officer in the middle of the block where the paramedics couldn't get to her. Specifically, I can remember this vividly. And you got to, build up to that. When you see that happening on a structure fire, it translates over to maybe a week from now, it'll be an officer down. It's important to interact. No doubt about it. John, you hung in there good.
I'm hanging in there.
I was worried here at the end.
Rocky Balboa on the ropes. But
no, you hung in there.
One more point to go along with what we're saying is, you consider most folks in patrol, they're early in their career. Most folks that are in aviation are later in their career, and we've seen a lot of things. So I feel like it's our duty and obligation to provide these folks on the ground with our insights and our experience that we've seen and been through ourselves to make the job safer for one, themselves, but two, the people that they're protecting. That's crucial.
It's been a great time here. We went a lot longer than we anticipated, but it was really valuable. And so let me just wrap it up. And because it's starting to get a little dark. He's starting to look like Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. It's scaring me. One good thing from today is that even more people are going to know Doug Brimmer now, and which is going to be really cool. So let me just wrap it up by saying that the conversation with the two of you, we anticipated this being really valuable. It was even more valuable than I imagined. Both of you have. I'm sure you're going to inspire some folks out there that listen to this to do something, like what you're doing, even if it's on a smaller scale. And that's the idea. That was the idea of this podcast, to share that, but also to hear your backgrounds and where you came from to get where you're going. And both impressive. Both of you, thank you so much on behalf of Hangar Z and Vertical Helicast. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us for a couple hours. And we hope that the listeners walk away with some real positive thoughts of what we can do for our communities and outside the normal everyday responding to calls. So Ian, thank you from Riverside PD and Doug from San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
We were honored to have both of you. We really were. And John, congratulations. You made it. And you may not have a voice for a few days, but this was a good call, John. John, I was very excited about this, and I knew why, and now we can confirm why. This was good.
So before we close out, Jack, I'll ask Ian, for folks that may be in a position to donate toys, funding, resources to this event, how could they get in touch with you, and how could they contribute to the overall event?
Great question. The biggest thing, I hate to say it, but I'm kind of like the hub for all this. So if they can just email me directly, Crocker, that's ICROCKER at riversideca.gov, or you can reach out to the RPOA, the Riverside Police Officers Association Assistance Fund. We work with the POA on collecting any type of donations that we can get for buying toys on top of any donations that we get, or even it just helps for the day of the event, helping provide little things like water, things like that. So if you're interested in donating, whether it's money or toys, reach out to me personally on my email, and I'll be happy to guide you along on how we can make that happen.
From a business standpoint, and not that it's about the dollars and cents, but for the business that may be wanting to contribute money, if they contribute to the POA through that avenue, is that a tax deductible way of contributing?
Yeah, so we're set up through the POA Assistance Fund. It's our POA Assistance Fund, Cops for Kids, and we have donors that are helping us out. We have Get Loaded Guns and Ammo. We have Stater Brothers Charities helped us out this year. They're going to be a great partnership to have. We're very grateful for that. So yeah, it is tax deductible. We have a nonprofit set up for that. So if they're interested as a business, I can get them that information as well.
All right, cool.
Wrap us up, John.
All right. Well, before my voice shuts down, it's been an honor and a privilege to have you guys on, and we'll catch you guys soon. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
See ya. This is the end of our conversation with Ian and Doug on the Loma Linda Children's Hospital Cops for Kids Flying. Join us for another Ask the Expert session after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
Thank you to our sponsor, CNC Technologies. CNC Technologies, serving law enforcement, government, and military markets with tailored mission solutions, system training, and live 24/7 support with CNC.live platform. Explore more at cnctechnologies.com. Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com. You protect and defend. So do we. Astronautics' proven cybersecurity, connectivity, and upgrade solutions support helicopter OEMs and operators worldwide. When the mission matters, you need to trust that your avionics systems are secure, connected, and reliable because lives depend on it. Continue to protect and defend. So will we. Contact Astronautics at www.astronautics.com.
Thank you for hanging out to hear from our sponsors. Without their support, these conversations wouldn't be possible. And thank you for joining us for an Ask the Expert session. For this session, we call Hangar Z co-host and Vertical Valor contributing writer, Mike Calhoun. He comes to us from the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. He's a rescue pilot flying their H-145. It goes by the call sign Rescue 9. Mike helped to develop the rescue program from the ground up.
Hello, sir.
Well, hello, is this the Mike Calhoun?
It is. It is. It's the John Gray.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is. Hey, thank you for taking my call, by the way. Calling because you know we started the Ask the Expert session, and I called to talk to an expert.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool, man.
So what we're doing is we're asking listeners to send in questions. And once they submit a question, then I'll lean on you all as experts to answer those questions. So this one I felt like was right up your alley. So let me just read the question to you, and then you can give me your thoughts afterwards. The question is, my agency is considering implementing a rescue program in addition to our normal law enforcement mission. What are some of the considerations we should take into account before investing time and money into the rescue program? Having been a part of Rescue 9 and then its inception, what would your answer be to that question?
Well, I would say, first of all, the aircraft selection is number one, and that's key. And that's going to determine your capabilities as to what you can and cannot do. So when you're sitting down with the decision makers, you need to know, and it needs to be hammered out, how deep and how robust will your search and rescue program be? Will it and take into consideration the performance requirements of that helicopter first and foremost? If you have high altitude areas, tall mountains, low density altitude environment, hot temperatures, make sure you select an aircraft first and foremost that can perform that mission in those environments that are pretty demanding on a helicopter. So from there, once you have that established, that hey, we've got some pretty demanding geography here. We're going to need to select an aircraft that will be able to accommodate that. So from there, that's when the decision makers need to buy in that this is something that we need based on our terrain. And then from there, decide, are you going to be daytime only or daytime and nighttime response with night vision goggles? You'll have to budget in the training and the goggles themselves if you're going to do that. And then going from there, decide what's your mission profile, how deep is it going to be? Is it going to be just kind of mountainous hoisting, hover stepping? Or is it also going to be some swift water, over water, very technical type of rescues that requires its own skill set as far as training, initial training as well, and is different equipment that you're going to need as well to accommodate that mission. With the equipment required for a swiftwater rescue is very different from, say, a typical hoist rescue in the mountains. The harnesses are different, the gear is different, The training is different, that initial training too. So I would sit down and hash all that out. You've got to know that in the beginning as to how deep your mission profile is going to be, and select that aircraft as well. You could, I know budgets are pretty tight. So if you're going to go single engine, like a lot of agencies, make sure you select a good, powerful enough single engine helicopter that's good for hoisting. Or if you're fortunate enough and you can go the twin engine route, and I would recommend that, get that aircraft, select that aircraft in that environment, and that can perform in that environment for you. Because nothing's going to be worse than you get this aircraft that cannot perform at the altitudes and the density altitudes that you're going to have within your jurisdiction. So once you get the aircraft selected, then you get your mission profile clearly defined as to how deep you're going to take it. Then you start selecting the initial training with a reputable training vendor, and the gear as well. And those training vendors can help you with that gear. I know what I did when we made the jump from single engine to twin engine search and rescue is I called around with, there was only 2 other agencies in the state in law enforcement that had our airframe. And I contacted those agencies and asked them if there was anything they regretted about that airframe. They had, very similar geography that we do. And so use those external resources too to help build your own program. Those guys were tremendously helpful with us, Las Vegas Metro PD and New Mexico State Police. Using those existing agencies that are already flying the airframe in similar geography, and it can help you with that build out the initial training programs as well. So very, very important to just get that on the front end of establishing what your mission profile is going to be and properly selecting that aircraft.
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations to take into place there. I think a lot of folks see a hoist on the side of an aircraft and think it's going to be a fairly simple addition in their mission profile. And just by, the explanation you provided, you can tell there's a lot of considerations that need to be put in place before you even consider implementing a program.
Yeah.
But
additionally, if you're going to start up a search and rescue program, ensure that the decision makers will build in enough training budget for the first several years of that program, because you want to be able to fly as much as you feel like you need to stay proficient, especially when you're learning the environment. Flying in search and rescue in the mountains is a whole different animal than flying a law enforcement patrol. So you need to have enough budget in the beginning as well, the decision makers need to be aware and wholeheartedly endorse the fact that we need extra budget, extra money for flight time, for the crews to do some in-house practice, in-house training, so that they can get very, very comfortable flying in the mountains, because it takes some time when if you're flying in some pretty demanding environments like that, daytime and especially at nighttime too. So hopefully they can have that budget to fall back on and say, hey, we need some more time, we need some more practice in the mountains, daytime, nighttime, so that hopefully the bosses can accommodate that. Because if you're going to do this, you got to do it well. You got to do it right from the beginning, stand it up correctly in the beginning, and invest. And they got to understand that it is going to be quite a bit of money. So, but to do it correctly and to do it safely, they got to put in that initial investment.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. Well, Mike, thank you for taking the time to field this call and to give us your opinion and advice on starting something like this. Looking forward to seeing you
at pleasure, John.
HAI, and look forward to having the podcast again here real soon.
Absolutely. Looking forward to all those things, John. Keep up the good work, man. Good to talk to you.
All right, man. Catch you later.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Time to close up the Hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.